بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. في هذا الدرس سندرس الدرس الرابع عشر إن شاء الله. In this lesson we're going to study lesson 14 inshallah. But before we cover the passage, we need to explain the main rule that's going to be covered in this lesson. And that main rule is the fi'l amr, the imperative form, the command form of the verb. How do we construct the fi'l amr? So we've already covered fi'l madi. Inshallah, we should be confident with the fi'l madi. And we've also covered the fi'l mudari', something we have just completed recently. So we should be confident with the fi'l mudari' also. Now we are left with the third type of verb, which is the fi'l amr. How do we construct the fi'l amr? We're going to learn inshallah in this lesson how to construct the fi'l amr using 4 easy steps inshallah. So the fi'l amr, the first step of creating the fi'l amr is we take the fi'l amr from the fi'l mudari'. To construct the fi'l amr, we have to go back to the fi'l mudari'. And in particular, the mukhatab section. So we have ghaib, mukhatab, mutakallim. But the fi'l amr, we're only going to have this section in the conjugation table for the fi'l amr. Because you're only going to command someone you're speaking to. You can't command a third person, and you can't command yourself. You can only command the second person. So the conjugation table for the fi'l amr looks like this. It only has these sections, which I've done here. This is the conjugation table for the fi'l amr, only that middle section, the mukhatab, second person, because it's only possible for you to command second person, someone who you're addressing. طيب. Okay, so this is what we're going to be filling out, inshallah. So what are the 4 steps? Step number 1, as we've just mentioned now, fi'l amr is taken from al-mudari' al-mukhatab. So we take the fi'l amr from the mudari' al-mukhatab, the second person mudari' forms, 6 in total. Mufrad, mudhakkar mu'annath, muthanna, mudhakkar mu'annath, jam', mudhakkar mu'annath. So that's step number 1. Okay. What's step number 2? Step number 2 is we have to remove the harful mudara'. We're going to remove the ta, we're going to remove the ta, the ta, the ta, the ta, the ta in all of them. We remove the harful mudara', which is the ta. طيب. Why are we removing the harful mudara'? Because this is a fi'l amr now. The harful mudara' is there to indicate that this is fi'l mudari'. So seeing as it's not fi'l mudari' no more, we don't need the harful mudara'. So remove harful mudara'. Remove harf mudara'. That's step number 2. طيب. So once we've removed the harf al-mudara', what happens is we're going to have fa with a sukun. The fa is going to be there with the sukun. And the Arabs, they don't begin words with sukun. They find it difficult to pronounce such words. F'alani, f'aluna, it's going to be very difficult. And for this reason, they bring a hamzatul wasl. We need to introduce a hamzatul wasl for step number 3. Why? Because after removing harf al-mudara', the verb starts with a sukun, and the Arabs, they don't begin words with sukun. So we need to introduce or prefix hamzatul wasl. Hamzatul wasl is the sullamul lisan. It's the step ladder for the tongue. Hamzatul wasl is going to carry the haraka. Hamzatul wasl. Hamzatul wasl. So step 3 is to introduce hamzatul wasl. طيب. So we have hamzatul wasl here. This hamzatul wasl is going to have one of two harakat. One of two harakat. It's either going to have a kasra or it's going to have a dhamma. 2 possibilities. When do we give it a kasra? When do we give it a dhamma? To determine whether we give it a kasra or dhamma, to know which one we give it, we have to look at the third letter. So we count 3 letters from the start of the verb, including the Hamzatul Wasl. So we've introduced the Hamzatul Wasl, so we're going to count the Hamzatul Wasl as the first letter. Then the Fa'ul Kalima, which has a Sukoon, is the second letter. Then the third letter. The third letter is what's going to determine the Haraka that we put on the Hamzatul Wasl. Is it Kasra or Dhamma? This is what's going to determine. طيب. If the third letter has a Dhamma, if we see a third, on the third letter there's a Dhamma, the Hamzatul Wasl is also going to have a Dhamma. We read the Hamzatul Wasl with a Dhamma. طيب. If the third letter has anything other than Dhamma, يعني Fatha or Kasra, anything other than Dhamma, then we are left with the other option. The other option is we give the Hamzatul Wasl a Kasra. So if we see on the third letter a Fatha or Kasra, the Hamzatul Wasl is going to take a Kasra. If we see on the third letter a Dhamma, then we give it a Dhamma. Let's give an example now. So we have تخرج. We take it from the Mukhatab, right? تخرج أنت تخرج. We're going to get the fi'l amr from this. What's step 1? To take it from the Mudari' Mukhatab. So we've already implemented step 1. We've taken from the Mudari' Mukhatab. أنت تخرج. طيب. Step 2, remove حرف المضارعة. Okay. We've removed حرف المضارعة. The verb now starts with a Sukoon. So we need to introduce Hamzatul Wasl. We've put Hamzatul Wasl. How do we read this Hamzatul Wasl? We have two options. Is it إخرج? Okay. إخرج or أخرج. أخرج. What did we say? We said we look at the third letter. So we count 1, 2, 3. So the Ainul Kalima, which is the third letter, has a Dhamma. If it has a Dhamma, we said that the Hamzatul Wasl takes a Dhamma. So here it's going to be أخرج. أخرج. طيب, another example. We have تذهب. تذهب. We've taken it from the Mudari' Mukhatab. Step 2, remove the Harf al-Mudara'. Introduce Hamzatul Wasl. How do you read the Hamzatul Wasl? Look at the third letter. 1, 2, 3. It has other than Dhamma. Other than Dhamma, we give it Kasra. So it's going to be إذهبوا. إذهبوا. Another example. أنت تضرب. You are hitting. So we've taken it from the Mudari' Mukhatab. Step 2, remove the Harf al-Mudara'. It starts with a Sukoon, so we bring Hamzatul Wasl. The Hamzatul Wasl, how do we read it? Two options, Kasra or Dhamma. We look at the third letter. 1, 2, 3. Third letter has other than Dhamma, so we give it a Kasra. Whenever you see, whenever there's a Dhamma missing, just give it a Kasra. But if you see Dhamma, give it a Dhamma. So how do you read this? إضربوا. إضربوا. How many steps? 3. We said there's 4 steps, so we're left with one more step. Step 4. Step 4 is regarding the last letter. What's the harakah of the last letter? This is step 4. Step 4, to explain step 4, we need to go back to the categorization of the fi'l that we mentioned previously. So we mentioned the fi'l mudari' in terms of i'rab. We have it can be divided into 3 categories. 3 categories in total. But we begin with mu'rab first, and then we have mabni, right? With mu'rab, we have 2 types. The ones that have no additions to the end. Remember, the ones with no additions. No additions, there's nothing added to the end of the verb. Like أذهب, نذهب, تذهب, يذهب, those ones. There's no additions. With these ones, the lamul kalima will have a dhamma if it's marfu'. If it's mansub, it has a fatha. If it's majzoom, it has a sukoon. So if we had ذهب يذهب, it will be يذهب يذهب يذهب. So when it's majzoom, it has a sukoon. So this is the one with no additions. And then we have al-af'al al-khamsa. What's af'al al-khamsa? Af'al al-khamsa is the fi'l mudari' which has either waw al-jama'a attached to it, or alif al-ithnain, or ya al-mu'annath al-mukhataba. Alif, waw, or ya. If alif, waw, or ya are attached, and they're going to be attached in 5 cases, 5 forms, that's why we have af'al al-khamsa. That's why they call af'al al-khamsa. What are we looking for? We're looking for noon. Thubut al-noon. So if noon is present, it indicates that it's marfu'. If noon is not present, it indicates it's mansoob. If noon is also not present, it can also indicate majzoom. And to differentiate between the two, we look at the agent of change. What's affecting the verb? Is it something which makes it mansoob? Then we'd say the omission of the noon here indicates that it's mansoob. If it's something which makes it majzoom, then we say the omission of the noon in this case indicates that it's majzoom. So we look at the context to differentiate between the two. طيب. So mu'rab, we have two types. We have the ones with no additions. They are marfu with dhamma, mansoob with fatha, majzoom with sukun. The ones that are from the af'alul khamsa. As soon as we say af'alul khamsa, we should already know we're talking about the one that has alif, waw, or ya. And there's 5 in total, 5 forms. 5 forms in total. We've explained this before. The main thing is, if you see noon, that noon at the end of the verb indicates it's marfu'. Omission of the noon indicates it's either mansoob or majzoom. طيب. And then what's mabni? The mabni side. So far we have 1, 2, and then the mabni side, we have the third form, which is whenever the fi'l mudari' is attached to noon al-inath. Whenever we have noon al-inath attached, it becomes mabni on sukun. Meaning, if it's marfu', it's going to be mabni on sukun. If it's mansoob, it's going to be mabni on sukun. If it's majzoom, mabni on sukun. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. It remains the same because it's fixed on sukun. So the fi'l mudari' is divided into 3 types. طيب. So this one, when it's majzoom, what sign does it take to show it's majzoom? Sukun. So we have sukun. This one, when it's majzoom, what's the sign of it being majzoom? Omission of the noon. We can say hadf. Hadf means omission. Hadfun nooni. Mudaf ilayhi. Hadfun nooni. Omission of the noon. The opposite is thubutun noon. Thubut, the presence of the noon. And hadfun noon, omission of the noon. So the sign of these ones being majzoom is sukun. The sign of this being majzoom is the omission of the noon, hadfun noon. The sign of this being majzoom, well, majzoom doesn't come here because majzoom are descriptions or states which affect a mu'rab word. So it doesn't come here. This is going to be mabni ala on, mabni on sukun, ala sukuni. Mabni ala sukuni. This is mabni on sukun, fixed on sukun. Why is this important? This is important because this is how the fi'l amr is going to end. The ending of the fi'l amr depends on knowing this. Which type of verb is it? Because the rule is for the ending of the fi'l amr, how does the ending of the fi'l amr end? How does it end? There's a rule that says it is going to be mabni. Remember the fi'l madi and the fi'l amr, both of them are mabni. With the madi, it's mabni on fatha in all cases, unless it's attached to waw al-jama'ah, then it takes a dhamma. You say dhahabu. And then when it attaches to noon and the rest of the dhama'ir, it becomes mabni on sukun. So there's 3 possibilities in terms of the fi'l madi, the bina of the fi'l madi. Fatha, dhamma, sukun. And the fi'l amr, it also can be mabni on different things. It's going to be mabni. That there's no doubt. But what is it going to be mabni on? That's what we're trying to learn here. The rule, which is very simple, it says yubna ala ma yujzamu mudari'uhu. Yubna, it is fixed. It's going to be mabni on that which the mudari' form is made majzoom on. We go back to the mudari'. The fi'l amr, we take it from the mudari', right? So we go to its mudari' form, and its mudari' form, how is it made majzoom? According to how the fi'l mudari' is made majzoom, that's how we're going to make the fi'l amr mabni on. It's going to be mabni on the same thing that its mudari' is majzoom on. طيب. Let's apply the principles that we've learned so far. We take it from the mudari' mukhatab. I've applied that. That's what we have here. Second rule, remove harf al-mudara', which is the ta in all of them. I'm going to remove the harf al-mudara' from all of them. That's step 2. طيب. Step 3, introduce a hamzatul wasl because it's going to begin with sukun. The dhal has a sukun. Tadhhabani, So I bring Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Wasl. This Hamzatul Wasl, it can either have Dhamma or Kasra. Which one do I give it? Depends on the haraka of the third letter. So 1, 2, 3. Tadhhabu, tadhhabani, right? So we don't see Dhamma. If we don't see Dhamma, that means the Hamzatul Wasl takes a Kasra. And it's going to be the same because it's the same verb we're dealing with here. So it's all going to have a Kasra, 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 Kasra. The Hamzatul Wasl is always going to have a Kasra in this example because the Ha has a Fatha in all of them. طيب. Now we need to apply number 4. Number 4 says, what's the sign of the Mudari' being Majzoom? That sign which is there when the Fi'l Mudari' is Majzoom is going to be the same thing which it's going to be Mabni on in the Amr. Okay, so this is what we're trying to explain here. So there's Mu'rab where there's no additions. So this is a Mu'rab which there's no additions. How do we make this Majzoom? No additions is Majzoom with Sukoon. So the Amr of this is going to be Mabni on Sukoon. If it was Majzoom on Sukoon in the Mudari', it's going to be Mabni on Sukoon in the Amr. This has no additions. So we take it from here. No addition, Sukoon. It's Majzoom on Sukoon. So it's going to be Mabni on Sukoon. طيب. This one, this one, this one, and this one all fall into this category of Af'alul Khamsa, right? With Af'alul Khamsa, how are they Majzoom? They're Majzoom by omission, Hadfun Noon. Hadfun Noon. So if they're Majzoom in the Mudari' by omission of the Noon, in the Amr is going to be Mabni on omission of the Noon. The Amr is going to be made Mabni by omitting the Noon. So we end up with Idhhaba, Idhhabu. But when we take off the Noon, we need to add the Alif al-Fariqa. The same Alif that comes at the end of Dhahabu. We add that to show that this Waw is Waw al-Jama'ah. Idhhabu, Idhhabi, and then the Ya is going to be written like this. Idhhabi, Idhhaba. So far we have Idhhab, Idhhaba, Idhhabu, Idhhabi, Idhhaba. And then this one, how do we make this one Majzoom? Well, in the Mudari' it's always Mabni on Sukoon. So if it's Mabni on Sukoon, in the Mudari' it's going to remain Mabni on Sukoon in the Amr. So this remains the same, unchanged. The Amr is Idhhabna, Idhhabna. That's the Amr. Idhhabna. So we have Idhhab, Idhhaba, Idhhabu, Idhhabi, Idhhaba, Idhhabna. 4 steps. First step, you take the Fi'l Amr from the Mudari' Mukhatab. Second step, you have to remove the Harful Mudara'a. In this case, it's always going to be the Ta. Ta. Third step, after removing Harful Mudara'a, we see that the Fi'l Mudari' starts with a Sukoon. And this is not something which the Arabs allow in their language. They find it hard to pronounce letters beginning with Sukoon or words beginning with Sukoon. So they introduce Hamzatul Wasl. The Hamzatul Wasl has to have a haraka. And the possible harakat are either kasra or dhamma. To determine if it's kasra or dhamma, we look at the third letter, counting from the start, including the Hamzatul Wasl. So we count from the Hamzatul Wasl, the fa'ul kalima, then the aynul kalima is the third letter. So that third letter is what is going to determine whether we choose kasra or dhamma. If the third letter has dhamma, the Hamzatul Wasl has dhamma. If the third letter has anything other than dhamma, the Hamzatul Wasl is going to take a kasra. That's step 3. Step 4 is the most challenging of these 4 steps, and that is to determine what the Fi'l Amr is going to be Mabni on. We know that it's going to be Mabni, but it's going to be Mabni on different things. It's going to be Mabni on different things. If it's here, it's going to be Mabni on Sukoon. The next 4 is going to be Mabni by omitting the Noon, omission of the Noon. And then the last one, there's no changes. Mabni on the same thing in the Mudari', no changes. So the principle that we've just learnt is the Fi'l Amr is made Mabni on the same thing that Fi'l Mudari' is made Majzoom on. If it was a Mudari', what would be the sign of it be Majzoom? That sign which makes it Majzoom is the same sign that it's going to be Mabni on. So Sukoon for this one. These ones are from the af'alul khamsa, the 5 types of words where there's a noon that's additional when it's marfu', and then omission of the noon indicates mansub and majzoom. So to make these ones mabni, to make these ones, when you change it into the fi'l amr, you make it mabni on that which it was majzoom on in the mudari'. It's majzoom with hadf al-noon, removal of the noon. So we remove the noon likewise to make it amr. This one remains the same. طيب. If you want it to be easier for you, even more easier, just to learn, this one is going to have an ending, sukoon ending. This one, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next 4, remove the noon. And the last one, noon al-inath is there. Okay. And it has to have a fa'il, right? This is a fi'il. Every fi'il, whether it's madi, mudari, amr, it has to have a fa'il. So where's the fa'il in this case? The fa'il in this case is always going to be hidden. It's always hidden. It's never going to come out as a ism dhahir. It's hidden. And it is mustatir, damir mustatir, anta. You're commanding this person. Idhhab, go, you go, male, one male. So all of them have a damir which comes as the fa'il, except this one. Here in this case, it's going to be hidden, and it's going to be anta. Anta is always going to be hidden. طيب. So we can, inshallah, now fill out this conjugation table for the fi'l amr. This is what we're going to have. This is how it's going to look like. If you're commanding one person, it's going to look like this. 2, 3 males, and then females, 1, 2, and then more, is going to look like this. طيب. So the Hamzatul Wasl, I haven't given it a haraka. The Ain also I haven't given it a haraka because it can have different things. I'm going to give it a haraka now to show you how it looks like, the different possibilities. So if we gave the Ain a fatha, if the Ain had a fatha, what would the Hamzatul Wasl start with? This depends on the third letter, right? So in this case, it's going to have a kasra. It's going to be if'al, idhhab, iftah, and so on. طيب. If the ain had a kasra, it's also going to have a kasra. يعني idrib. And if it had a dhamma, the Hamzatul Wasl would have a dhamma. Ukhruj. طيب. This is how it's going to look like. And the same for all of them. It would be if'ala, or if'ila, or uf'ula. If this has a fatha or kasra, the Hamzatul Wasl is going to take kasra. But if it has a dhamma, then it's going to take a dhamma. And the same for all of them. So this is the tasrif table for the fi'l amr. The tasrif table for the fi'l amr. Really, we should have 3 different ones so that we can accommodate for the different ayn kalimat. If you had a fatha, one for ayn with a kasra, one for ayn with a dhamma. But if you understand, then you can use one tasrif table for all of them. طيب. So this is our lesson for today, inshallah. If we understand how to construct the fi'l amr, then we have understood the lesson 14, inshallah. So as homework, we're going to give 5 verbs. 5 verbs. And I'm going to give you the madi. So we have sami'a. That's homework number 1. I need you to give me the amr. Sami'a means to hear. Then we have hafidha, to memorize. Then we have fataha. Then we have, which means to open, kataba. Then we have qara'a, to read. 5 verbs. I've given you the madi. You need to apply the 4 rules that we've just mentioned now, and then have the fi'l amr. And then once you have the fi'l amr, you need to conjugate it like this, and be able to identify where is the fa'il in the different verbs, and place the Hamzatul Wasl. And so you should have 5 different tables, actually. You should have 5 different tables, one for each verb. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.